Welcome back, fellow soldiers, to this week's Developers Briefing, and that is Developers Briefing number 89. And this week's Developers Briefing is the most interesting one I've ever read. This will change the game Hell Let Loose forever, because this Developers Briefing is about grass overhaul. Yeah, but bad joke aside, this week's Developers Briefing really is about an overhaul of the grass and also part optimization for Hell Let Loose. And I will show you that an overhaul on the grass in the game can indeed be quite interesting for the performance and also the gameplay of Hell Let Loose. So stay tuned, and I think we're gonna dive right into it with how Max is opening the Developers Briefing. Grass, oh glorious grass. We've been profiling the game across the board and have always known that some aspects of the visuals are particularly heavy across the board. One of these is grass. For any of you that have followed Hell Let Loose, you'll be aware that grass has had more than 5 iterations within the game, and that each time it's had its positives and negatives with regard to the 3 key aspects: optimization, visual fidelity, and impact on the gameplay. Grass within games is hilariously complicated. Often increasing visual fidelity hurts optimization, which means it needs to be culled quickly, removing it from gameplay. However, ugly and optimized grass can seriously degrade the look of the game, which is a huge issue when Hell Let Loose contains fields and fields of it. And this is exactly what I thought when I read the Developers Briefing. Of course, grass overhaul doesn't sound like the most interesting overhaul, but hey, a game is not just shooting and running and also the team play, of course. It is also a large part the environment. And as you probably know, if you are a player of Hell Let Loose, this game gets a lot of its positive sides too, from its realistic environment, from those different beaches where those battles happened, from those fields where soldiers have to cross, etc. You get my point. This game has also a lot and a big focus on the environment, and as Max is telling here in the Developers Briefing, grass makes up a huge part of that environment, especially when you are running over an open field. And actually, me and I guess you too, you'd probably underestimate the role that grass plays in Hell Let Loose. And yes, I know it sounds like I need to find something interesting about it, but it really is. If you think about your times playing Hell Let Loose, I'm pretty sure you have experienced 1 or 2 situations where grass hasn't loaded in the far distance on the map or hasn't immediately loaded. And that gives you actually a huge advantage on enemy players that are probably crawling through higher grass and trying to hide there. And that's exactly also what Max and the developers are addressing in the Developers Briefing as one of the issues that they need and want to fix and improve in the future of the game, and that is that they have to find a good balance between optimization of the whole grass aspect, improvement of the grass aspect, and also of the performance inside the game. Because if they up the game with a huge grass overhaul, that probably just moves down the performance quite a bit for all the players or for players that are playing on a computer that can't handle it. So they have to find quite a good balance for that. So it is good to play on for everybody. Grass should be there to make up a good environment, but it should also be there to act as a form of barrier in the open fields, that soldiers still have some kind of cover when they crawl on the ground, so they can hide from enemy troops that are quite far away. And that's exactly what also makes up a very important thing in Hell Let Loose, because you are dying from just one shot, and if one of your enemies doesn't load and render the grass in the far distance and you just see an enemy crawling in an open field, a plain field without loaded grass, it's quite easier for them to hit you, obviously. And that is one of the aspects that the developers are also working on, besides the whole environmental aspect. Now let's see what Max is also telling us here about the upcoming changes that come to the whole grass aspect in Hell Let Loose. In order for grass to look nice within a game, it also needs a very refined shader and texture setup, and each stage of it has to be defined very carefully, both up close and at greater ranges. Coming in update 8, we've totally overhauled our grass, both visually and in terms of performance and gameplay. This has been something we've been known was a significant area for optimization for a while, and we're very excited to return to it. Visually, we've retained the photoreal quality of it up close, but have greatly reduced the poly count. The pain of grass is that in a game like Hell Let Loose, and broadly this can be said across the whole title, visuals have to hold up with a camera 10 centimeters away as well as a kilometer away, compared to an isometric game like Path of Exile, where the visuals are always sitting at a fixed distance from the camera. This rework has allowed us to retain a great look up close, but it's also allowed us to optimize the grass in a way that allows us to keep it present at much greater ranges. On a gameplay level, every map in Hell Let Loose has long grass and short grass layers. Previously, our long grass layer has been so expensive that we've had to cull it away much quicker than we'd like. This has led to awkward gameplay where laying down in it only serves as a disadvantage, as you can be both seen and shot from long ranges because the grass is not rendering for enemy players, while also having your own view obstructed. However, due to the huge cost savings on the new grass, we're now able to cool down the long grass far further away than previously. This means that large Normandy grass heavy maps like Purple Heart Lane, SME, SMDM have become infinitely more interesting when crossing fields and fighting around strong points. Grassy fields and clearings now feel far more three-dimensional with different concealment, creating possibilities to use longer grass to flank and hide. So you guys can see the devs are especially working on the aspect that grass is also playable, if you want to call it that way. It just has to fit inside the gameplay and in the meta, and players have to be able to use it as an advantage to be able to hide without having a disadvantage as described before. But, and I think this will also end this developers briefing, this overhaul will also bring something positive to the performance of each and everyone. And that's what Max is telling at the end of this developers briefing. He says that this grass overhaul that comes in update number 8 has lifted or will lift frames across every single map significantly, and I think that is what a lot of players have been waiting for, just something that rescues their frames inside the game or during the game. He's writing though that they can't give a uniform number of how many FPS you're gaining by this overhaul, but it will depend on the current strength of your GPU, and sometimes it can even make up to double digits of FPS for many players. That's what they write. If it will be that way, we'll see. But don't forget, the developers are still also working on the crash fixing issues, and I think the FPS fixing or upping the game with more FPS is still a huge point in the agenda of the developers, since this will profit the game a lot when it comes to the gameplay in Hell Let Loose. Now, let me know what you think about the grass overhaul that comes with update number 8. let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the content I've provided here, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and give the video a thumbs up. You can also support me outside of YouTube on my Patreon or by sharing this video on a subreddit. So that's been it for this week's developers briefing. I hope you enjoyed, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna see each other on the battlefield.